Today we're going to talk about building construction, the basics. Now, hopefully, those of you that have been around a while, this is a review for you, but I hope you get something from it. And for you rookies out there, this is where we start. This is how we start fighting fire, is understanding our enemy. When I first started in the fire service, at least for the first 15 years, there wasn't much talk about building construction. We talked about hose loads and hydraulics and tanker operations and incident command and all those things, but we didn't spend much time talking about building construction. And then I took a class, and our textbook was Building Construction for the Fire Service by Francis Brannigan. And this was the first version of it. There's multiple versions out now. But anyway, let's start with the basics. So we're going to talk about type 1 construction, which in my terms are really fire resistive. We're going to talk a little bit about that. Type 2, pretty fire resistive. Type 3, ordinary construction. Fire resistive on the outside, lots of wood and combustibles on the inside. Type 4, heavy timber, and type 5, wood frame. So type 1, fire resistive. A lot of concrete and steel. That concrete is going to be reinforced in most cases. It's going to be pre-tensioned or post-tension. That's more of an advanced subject we'll talk about in another episode, but in building construction it is important to understand the difference between the two and their tendencies. Protected steel, that's key here, protected steel on a type 1 construction. These type of buildings are generally not that common in the rural areas. It depends on what you think of type 1, but for the most part, we're not going to have these type of buildings in our suburban or rural areas. They're there, but they're not that common. They're more common in urban areas. Occupancy is going to be a big deal with these. So we know by being fire resistive that the buildings itself is probably not going to burn down if it's not for the fire load or the hazardous materials that's within the building. And so that's what we need to worry about, is the occupancy of the building. What's in it? Type 2 buildings are constructed with non-combustible materials, steel and concrete. The difference from a type 1 building is primarily the fact that the steel is unprotected. So there's no protective coating on the steel to protect it from the heat. So in heavy fire conditions, the steel is going to be susceptible to weakening and expanding and causing us problems with the structure. Generally speaking, these buildings are designed with a concept to keep the fire from, if there's a fire in the building, to keep it from becoming a structure fire, or that the building isn't involved in the fire. The contents are what is actually burning. So that depends on the occupancy and the load, what we need to worry about. So again, similar to a type 1, we're going to need to worry about what the occupancy is and what the fire load is. But these buildings are more susceptible to collapse due to the unprotected steel. The other thing about these buildings is they're generally metal roofs, and they're using trusses to support those roofs, and then they're trying to span large areas or have large open areas, so there's a long span with those trusses. In a type 3, we're talking about ordinary, or fire resistive on the outside and lots of wood and combustibles on the inside. So you're going to find these in a lot of old downtowns. You're going to see a lot of these are going to be made with some kind of masonry, a lot of brick, and then they'll have wood members on the inside, and all kinds of, the occupancies can be all kinds of things. So the masonry walls are what are the load-bearing walls. Like I said, there's going to be those wood joists, and most of the time the wood, the roof is going to be made of wood as well. One other thing to look for on these, especially on the older buildings, you may see what we call spreaders, and there are type 1 and type 2 spreaders. The difference between the two is one goes parallel to the joist, and one goes perpendicular to the joist. But what you're looking for is, generally speaking, what's happening here is you've got a rod going from one masonry wall all the way through to the opposite side of the building to the other masonry wall. And generally what you'll see on the outside is you'll see some kind of decorative form. So a lot of times you'll see a star or something like that. And so that rod is holding that whole structure together, because in a lot of cases that structure, those masonry walls, may have weakened over time. So these are something to worry about when we get under heavy fire conditions. building collapse is definitely a possibility in these, so we need to be aware of that. So ordinary construction, type 3. So when we talk about type 4, we're talking about heavy timber construction. And what we mean by that is large dimension lumber is what is used. This lumber, wood can at these sizes, they can handle a heck of a lot of weight. So a lot of these buildings may have that heavy timber construction between floors, and they may be multi-stories high, and they may have some really heavy fire load on each of the floors with that wood, that heavy timber construction holding it up. So these are generally in older buildings. You can identify them by the size and the age of the building a lot of times. And then one of the things that we are concerned about is that there's a lack of fire protection on the finishes on the inside on this heavy timber. And so what can happen is the fire can get into the connection points where the timber comes together and cause us problems. I've been on a few fires where we thought we had the fire out, and there was fire in those connections still smoldering, and we ended up going back on those. So that happened a couple times in my career. So heavy timber construction, there's not a lot of new heavy timber construction, but what's out there, we need to understand it. So type 5 is wood frame. Your average residence is made of wood, what we consider wood frame. The size of the wood is a big deal, and that's changed over time. So if you look back and you look at a house built in, say, the 1940s, the 2x4 back then is going to be a lot larger than a 2x4 today. And so that the mass of the wood is what carries the load, and that is what gives it some strength when it is exposed to fire. So the smaller that piece of wood, the quicker it's going to fail. And so what we have today is we have homes with a lot more synthetic materials on the inside. So the fire load on the inside is a lot hotter, so things burn quicker and hotter. And then we have a structure that's made of smaller diameter wood, therefore it's going to collapse quicker. So we need to be aware of that. Obviously, that's one of the things, if you're a beginner, you're going to hear this over and over. If you've been around a while, you've heard this over and over. But it's the truth. It's part of what we deal with every day, and it's not getting any better. And when I say it's not getting any better, you guys, those of you that have been around a while, you're starting to see this engineered wood, or we're not starting to see, we've been seeing it for a while, engineered wood, and what the weakness it has under fire. It just does not hold up under fire conditions. And then the other thing is common in these structures is the trusses, and the connectors of the trusses tend to be our first worry, because we're connecting them with steel. So we get those gusset plates, and they're connecting the two pieces of wood, and they're made of steel, and they get heated up, and then they fail. And then again, the condition of the wood, how old's the building? Does it have any decay? Has it been taken care of? Has it had a roof leak forever? And do they have termites? I know around here where I live, termites are very common. You can have all the knowledge in the world about fire dynamics. You can understand fire loads and water flow and overcoming the BTUs and all those technical things. But if you don't understand how the building is built, you don't understand your enemy. And knowing your enemy is the key to fighting fire. The fire isn't our enemy, the building is. So whether you're a rookie or a seasoned veteran, I hope you got something out of this. If you want to know more, please contact me. Here's my cell phone. You can text me as well. You can call me or text me, and you can email me. Again, I work at RT Insurance. We specialize in emergency services insurance. So if your fire department has any needs whatsoever, there's no sense in recreating the wheel. Give us a call and we can help you with your organization. Thanks.